Hello again and a very good evening to you and a very warm welcome this very cold December night to our little podcast, Sweet Omagh Internet Radio. And as I look across, I see my co-presenter, Mr. Declan Ford.
We're travelling abroad tonight, Mr. McGurgan. Have you ever been here before?
Many times. I lived in this town for a while, you know.
Ooh, I wonder do the great and the good out there know where we are. Listen to the silence. That's Carrickmore there.
Valuable stuff.
Oh, no, indeed. We're here in the Patrician Hall because we're in the middle of a little rehearsal for a Christmas show that's going on very shortly. And the Patrician Hall has seen many great performers. You know,
no less than your own.
Oh, shush. But tell me this, do you remember any of the great acts that would have graced the stage of the Patrician?
The very first sound job I ever done here was for the late Tommy Macomb.
My God. Lord save us, that's going back. A great performer, him and the banjo.
Absolutely.
From Katy, County Armagh.
Yeah.
You know, and he was here years before that. I think Val Doonigan, performed here. The Dubliners, of course. Roy Orbison. And other great and the good, the Clancy brothers.
Oh yeah, great crack up here, seriously. Good community as well.
Great community, and of course with the Gap Ballroom just down the road. Of course that's different kind of music. You know, the old Showbands. You know, and I believe our broadcast tonight is kind of linked into that.
It is indeed. During the summer when we were working alongside the Street Arts Centre, we did some interviews with some of the great Plattermen Showband members. We did a lengthy interview with Ray Moore.
Oh yes, the great Ray Moore, great musical director, a great man of music, you know, and a great sense of humour. The more, the merrier.
He's a witty guy, all right. But lovely interview, Declan. It's just quite a lengthy interview, but it tells his whole story. It tells the story of the Plattermen and how such a local band rose to such high.
Oh, absolutely. You know, not only in this neck of the woods, but you know, as far away as Cork. You know, I think they were mobbed in Cork, and of course they played in America. You know, they were just. I think they were among the first, if you want to call them, showband superstars.
They were.
You know, and of course a lot of that was due to Ray's arrangements, and he had a great ear and a great ear for sound and a great ear for song and music. You know,
and still a great player because during the early on this summer we were fit to hear Ray playing on the stages at the Street Arts Centre as well.
That's right. Tinkling the Ivories, and I think at the concert. It linked in with his birthday, but I think it was 3 weeks premature. But sure, what odds? I think he enjoyed the cake anyhow.
Oh, he did, no doubt.
I presume he waited the 3 weeks before he ate it. But no, it was an absolutely wonderful night, and how great to see himself and Pat Chesters and Leo Doran there. It was one of those nights that you will tell your children and grandchildren, I was there.
Yes.
And I was glad to be there.
And I think that they have plans maybe to do something similar next year, maybe move it up a decade as well.
Well, wouldn't that be good? You know, we have touched upon the 60s and of course the 40s and 50s prior to that, but wouldn't it be great to link into the 1970s when the music changed, the Plattermen changed their sound, and then we had the development of kind of, I suppose, country and Irish and country and Western and country, you know, and it'd be nice to tap into that.
Oh, it would indeed.
And of course the other performers in Omagh that kind of rose to prominence in that decade.
Yes.
I look forward to that. More interviews. On the road again, as Willie Nelson says.
Yes. We never left the road.
No place to go to. We're on the one road to nowhere.
Okay, well it is a very cold Christmas week, so nothing for me to say, Declan, but enjoy what's left of this very cold month.
As I shiver and watch the icicles drip from your nose.
As you can, all right. Well, you know, Carrickmore hospitality.
They break off and pierce the ground. Anyway, to all the folks out there, look, I think enjoy this interview tonight. It is absolutely wonderful. It's the great Ray Moore.
So without further ado, folks, sit back, relax. You've got all Christmas to listen to this, and all next year if you want to as well. And enjoy the company of Ray Moore. Tommy, you grew up on the hill, didn't you?
Gallas Hill, yeah, Brook Street first. Can't forget Brook Street. Brook Street was my what do you call it? Breeding ground. No, not breeding ground. What would you call it? You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, exactly. Well, then, I remember you in the hill.
Yeah. Up in Eastview.
Yes.
Beside the swings.
Happy days.
Oh, yeah.
What is it about Gallas Hill that seems to be so special? You know, it seems to have...
What was it about Gallas Hill?
Mm-hmm.
Community. People. People loved each other. And people helped each other. And I'll tell you something. I could be right and I could be wrong. It was a mixed community. I had the other side of the house, both sides of me. You know?
Yeah.
And we got on great.
People had to support each other, didn't it?
When it came up to this time of the year, well, by then the start of June, actually, another musician next door, remember big Davy Camley?
Very well. Mervyn, Cameron,
Yeah.
all those guys, yeah.
David would get the pipes out and he'd start practicing for the 12th. And I would go in with a trumpet into his backyard, or he'd go into my backyard, and we'd join in. I'd be playing the tunes that he'd be playing in. It was great.
It was. But anyway, what's your earliest memories growing up in Omagh, Ray? You know,
Growing up in Omagh,
Mm-hmm.
earliest memory, in the summers, going out with my granny, out to the Lovers Retreat, and the tar melting on the road, and you'd get your good socks covered in tar, and your ankles covered in tar. And I think it was about 3, and I fell into the river, and I was being swept down the river, and the Lovers, Granny jumped in, pulled me out. So that's one of my earliest memories. Wow. But the fun thing, you know, during the summers when we got a wee bit older, we went to school and that was lovely. We had nothing. We didn't have it. My dad was postman.
What a well-known postman he was too. I mean,
yeah, he's well known.
All right. I have great memories of him coming out here. He used to park the van. My father and I'd shed, and he used to take his car out, and Joe would bring the van in and close the door so nobody'd see him there for an hour or two.
Yeah.
Bring a tin whistles, drop a tea and maybe an egg and chips or something, and chat to my father about cultists and Irish music and stuff till their cows would come home.
About 10 years after he retired, I took him on his old route up by Greencastle and Glenlark and Glen McCoffer and all the glens way up around there. And the people came out, and quite a few of them spoke to him in Irish, and he spoke back to them. And they were delighted to see him, and he knew every one of them.
Where was he native of?
He was actually born, as far as we know, in London. His mother was from Limavady, and she had 2 children out of wedlock in the 1920s. He was born in 17. So you imagine trying to bring up children in London in the 20s and you no husband. But anyway, they remember him and his brother Pat, who lived in Longford, remembered their mother coming to visit them in an orphanage. She put them in an orphanage because she couldn't afford to keep them, look after them. But they remember her coming, and then this time they came, they had a baby with her, a wee girl. Then she stopped coming. And I think it's about 15 years ago now, Uncle Pat, who lived in Longford, he was in Mullingar Hospital. And one of the nurses had heard her priest in Carrigallen, County Leitrim, heard the priest talking about, he got a letter from a Mrs. Barrett in Lincolnshire. And they were looking for 2 boys who were sent out of the orphanage when they were 15. And one of them was sent to Carrigallen. And she was clued in. She remembered Pat talking about his brother Joe. And she told Joe's daughter, or Pat's daughter, about this lady. And so our Michael followed it up. And we had done a bit of research on them too. Connor, now my son, he'd done a bit of research too. So we knew what questions to ask this lady. And turned out she was their long lost sister after 74 years.
Wow.
And
74 years, Joe.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But she was in Limavady, living right through the 50s. And she didn't know, but she'd been searching for them for years.
Didn't know where they finished.
Didn't know where. The nuns from the Mill Hill Orphanage sent her all sorts of directions, Australia, Canada, America. Oh, they might be in here, you know. So they were kept apart. But anyway, Uncle Pat, he became 15. He was sent out to work as a farm slave labourer in County Leitrim. He worked without pay for 20 years. He got his digs was the barn, and they bring the food out to him, feed him just like an animal. So he hadn't much for life. But anyway, that was, you're talking about my dad. That's what we know about my dad.
Yes.
But anyway, my dad, well, I was chosen to tell him that we found his sister. And he had warned us never to look until it's passed. And he was in hospital. He was very ill. And me and my mum went out to him. And I says, Dad, how would you feel if I told you we found your sister? Or your sister found us? And there was a silence, and I didn't know what he was going to say. I'd be delighted, he says. And that was music to my ears, you know.
Great. Lovely.
So they wheeled the phone, and it was on one of them coin phones on a wee trolley into the ward. And I rang her. I said, here, talk to your brother. And of course, my dad, always joking. He said, the last time I seen you, he said, you were coming out of jail. That was the first word she said to her. And she busted out laughing, and she says, I knew it. She said, I knew you were like that. So we got her over to Omagh, her and her husband. And her husband took sick here, and he had to stay for about 10 weeks, which was great because we got to know her.
Great. Not a lovely story.
Magic.
And your dad had a great interest in music, all sorts of music, and was very talented, and obviously instilled that in you all as a family, which must have been a wonderful childhood when you look back on it now.
Oh, yeah.
To be exposed to that sort of music.
Yeah, he started the family band, I'd say, about early 60s. But I wasn't in it. I was already in the Showbands at that time, and they were very good. They were kind of he modelled them on Ciol na Uasal, which is the music of the noblemen. That was the name of an album by Sean O'Reilly and the Cultúra Cullen. And they played a lot of kind of chieftains. They were the forerunners of the chieftains, actually. And he sort of kind of copied them, kind of thing, and the arrangements and all. But they did well. They played support to the Dubliners in Ulster Hall. They represented Tyrone in 1966 for their 50th anniversary of the Rising in the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin. And played loads of concerts and the Flaws and everything like that. Around the 60s, my dad, he was playing the mouth organ. He had a wee tiny mouth organ, inch long, and he could play reels in it. And he says that somebody hit him with a slap in the back one time, good man, Joe, and he swallowed the bloody thing. And he said every time he took a step, he said he played a C sharp.
And I remember the television crew coming to your house in Eastview Terrace.
That's right. They were on television quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. It was a big event at the time in the town, remember it?
Uh-huh. Oh, no, they're lovely, lovely times.
Yeah.
Then my mother, she loves singing. And my knowledge of jazz tunes and American songbook came from her. She used to sing all these songs, you know, Frank Sinatra stuff and all that to me.
Where was her influence?
Hey?
Where did she get the influence from?
Listen to the radio and dances years and years ago. And then my dad's influences, he was in the army. So he got a certain amount of music there. He was a drummer. So you're just kind of a hodgepodge of music.
Yes, that all came.
And he loved Irish, everything Irish. He was searching for his roots in his mind.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
he became more Irish than most of the Irish ones around. But then when he joined the army, he got shifted to an Irish regiment. Then the Skilling Fusiliers was the first one. He got shifted to them so that he could get stationed in Northern Ireland, never crossed the border to see Pat, the brother, and kept in touch with him all through the years that way. And then he got a job as a postman then. After the war, that was it.
What's the first instrument you ever learned to play, Ray, when you were a young lad?
First instrument was piano, Mrs. Mailer, Brady Mailer. And she never forgave me for leaving it after 9 months. When I was 9, I stayed for 9 months because I wanted to play trumpet. Louis Armstrong was my favourite man then. And trumpet, St. Eugene's band, of course, that's where I got my grounding there. Then I played every instrument in the band practically except the reed instruments. Played all the brass instruments. Trombone, French horn, euphonium, bass. And it also inspired my curiosity in arranging because I noticed things, you know, I'd be playing French horn, then I'd be moved to another instrument, I'd be playing a different key, even though it was the same tune we played before. And this puzzled me and nobody could explain it to me. I found out myself. Worked on from then. Then I started arranging for the band, St. Eugene's band. They were a 30-piece band at the time.
So you're self-taught reader?
Self-taught, yeah.
You were a band leader at St. Eugene's, a conductor at the stage one time?
The conductor then, I can't remember what years that was. It must be 80s, mid-80s maybe, or maybe the 90s. Yeah. The band was practically defunct. So we got it together again, and there was about 12 in it. And we gradually built it up to Mike Reynolds took it over then. But I couldn't stay with it because I was, at that stage I was playing all over the shop. So did a lot of session work with other bands.
What was the very first band you joined? Do you remember the
first band? The Melody Boys.
Do you remember who's with you on that at all? Or?
Oh, I was down the town, down at Batisti's Cafe. It was a hangout for teenagers.
Teddy boys.
Teddy boys. And this guy called Brendan O'Donnell. Brendan said, would you play in my band? I said, well, surely. What do you want me to play? He says, trumpet. That's right. Come down to my house next Sunday, 11 Brookmount. So Mrs. Colton lived next door, Danny Colton's mother. She used to make all the clothes for the pantomimes and all. Oh, she was a character too. But Mrs. O'Donnell was lovely. We got tea and beans and beans and toast. Oh, that was a real excursion for us. Then we started to get a couple of gigs, and we had no transport, of course, so McSorley's Taxis, Bobby Brown, and Mr. McSorley, what do you call him? Packy McSorley, and Mickey Cairns. They were our chauffeurs way down to County Leitrim and all these places. Never heard of again after it.
Gear in the taxis, just put the gear on.
Yeah, all the gear's up in the roof rack and sitting on top of people's knees. And
oh my God. Yeah. Who else was in the band then? Who else was in the band? Do you remember?
The band changed quite a lot. Depended who was available. It wasn't that there was an awful lot of work. It's just Because you had to try to get a rehearsal, and try to get things moving, you know. Anyway, Sean McCrumlish played trombone. We had a couple of interlopers that came in, Jimmy O'Neill, and Brendan, of course, played piano. And then we started to get more organised. We changed the name to the Melody Boys. And then we had Aidan O'Neill and Pat Chesters, of course. Pat was in before Aidan. Jackie Adams would drum with us. And the names will come to me.
That's okay.
As we talk on.
Talk on, yeah. Roughly what year was that? You know,
that was about 1958, early 58.
And that was sort of the early start of the Showbands then, was it?
No, Showbands were later. They were about 1960s.
Right.
Early 60s.
Yes.
As far as now,
I know.
Don't quote me, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But you're going to quote me, that's the bloody thing about it. But there were great times because I was at school. I was 13, 14. We got McGlynn, we got Hardy in. And that was, it was great. This young boy playing guitar. And his amplifier was like a transistor radio. And if he was taking a solo, we'd hold the guitar up, the amplifier up to the microphone. And the microphones are always heard out of Gussie Hines. And if there was no electric, we had to take batteries. Until one night, we arrived up in Kaleeshall or something like that for a parochial carnival. And John McCrumlish, first of all, the priest says, I said, where's the power plug? He says, power? I said, what do you want power for? He says, nobody mentioned power to me, he says. So I had to run the line about 300 yards from my house. And then another time, we arrived there and they set up batteries, about 7 or 8 batteries, all in series. And poor John McCrumlish, God rest him, John put the trombone down on top of them. Sizzle, sizzle, spark, spark, and everything went out.
A basic start there. And that was, you say, late 50s. And then the other, sort of the big show bands, you know, with Shay Hutchison and the Melody Aces.
Sorry?
Some of the bigger show bands were like Shay Hutchison and the Melody Aces, were they?
Oh, they were around then, yeah, but they were heroes to us, you know. And Aidan McCallion passed away a couple of weeks ago. Aidan, he was my hero. Because at that time, Aidan was away playing in Ballina, which might as well be Africa, as far as I was concerned. Playing with a famous band, and Jack Ruan show band. And that was Aidan, and Aidan was my hero. So.
Well, tell me, how did the Plattermen whole story evolve for you?
Well, with Artie, we got a bass player. Speedy played bass. So that was the basis, and Jackie, of course, and drums. That was the basis of rhythm section. Myself and Pat Chesters and Billy McGinty by this stage on trombone. And we got Leo Dornan as the second sax, so we had 4 brass, which I could do a lot with. It's ideal because it's just soprano, alto, tenor, bass kind of thing. I could do my arrangements working on that principle. And we started to sound organised, harmonies, chords right. Of course, Brendan was a good accordion player, and he kept the whole thing together. We have a photograph somewhere of the Star Ballroom, 1958. As a band, Aidan O'Neill was in it. Poor Aidan passed away there not too long ago too, and his wife Emily. He met Emily in Tuam. We were playing in Tuam.
Took her back to Omagh.
Took her back to Omagh. Oh, that's a lovely girl, lovely couple. Funny, I saw something on Facebook. There's a photograph came up of the Arcadians. Now there's 4 Smith brothers, and that they were from Navan. Jimmy Smith was the leader, he was the eldest. Now, I used to go to hear them, and the star, my man, let me go. As long as I was home before 12 o'clock. And to hear these Arcadians. And Jimmy Smith was a lovely man. He chatted away to me. Little did I know that about 25 years later, his son Jimmy would be playing with me in Paddy Cole's band. So that was great. I met Jimmy lately there. He wasn't too well, but he's doing well now. He's doing grand again.
What year did Brian Call come to you then?
Brian was in and out, you see. Brian came in and he left again, then he came back again. Now, exactly the date, he was in around the mid-60s. Around the mid-60s. Brian, great country and western singer. And a good rock and roll singer. And loved singing rock and roll. In spite of himself. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I've never taken Brian Call for a rock and roll singer now.
Well, he used to do all the rock and roll. But he used to do rock and roll. He'd sing it just like he would sing country and western. And he had the rhythm, you see, and so everything was grand. Then we had what I call the saxophones. And by this stage, I think I had maybe got a piano or a keyboard or something. So we're a rock and roll band. Speedy was in, of course. Speedy was singing some of the rock and roll as well. Then 1967, we got a tour of America. And we had a big split up. June 1967. We were going to America on the 6th of June. And dispute with the two boys left the band.
What 2 boys that?
Speedy and Artie. So we were stuck then. We had no guitar player. We had a guitar player with Alan McCartney, but he had no time to get a passport. So I bought an electric piano and said we'll use that there just as a substitute for a guitar. It went great. Nobody noticed the difference. We played all our country and western old time waltzes. We played a country kind of a program over in, and Call was still with us, of course, at the time. Brian. I keep calling him Call, but somebody said there's no call for that. And that went down like a lead balloon. But anyway, I went over to America. We did the Irish clubs in New York. It's an experience. We went back. That was June. It's in the middle of the 6-day war, the Palestinian or Israeli war. Israel and Egypt. I'll tell you how I remember it, because El Al was beside Aer Lingus in Kennedy Airport, and the foreign minister, Abba Eban, was going to the United Nations, and he was on not the same flight as us, but the next flight in. We saw him being escorted by the police through the crowd.
Right.
So,
piece of history there. Right?
It's funny how the way things happen.
Yeah.
We're sitting out, left the gear in this place overnight, sorted out tomorrow. We're sitting outside, and this guy came walking past, sitting out in the car. And automatically I says, "Hello, Eamon." And he came back. He was a cousin of Jim McBride. You know, Jamesy McBride, he'd be a nephew of James's.
Yes.
From Leitrim.
Right.
And he'd come up to Omagh, and he went to school for a while in Omagh with us. And there he was in New York, and I met him in the street outside the Ambassador Hotel.
It's a small world when you see stuff like that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, some coincidence. I will not bore you with them.
No. Well then, what year did Brian decide to leave to follow a country role or what?
No, he wanted his own band. That's just the basis of it, just.
So you morphed in then to the Plattermen then?
Yes, yes, I forgot to add that whenever Speedy and Artie left, Rob came in the same week.
Rob Strong.
Robbie Strong, yeah. Robbie's already living in Omagh. So, Rob, the rest is history. Rick, he was with us right up to 1974, 75, from 67. That's about it.
Yeah. Most bands of that era were all playing country music or country and Irish or even American country.
Yeah.
But you took a totally different route. Why was that?
Because we could. We had the wherewithal to do it. I did the arrangements, told the boys what to play, and they studiously did it. And that's the simple answer to it. We didn't take a policy direction or anything like that. We just, I said, there's good stuff here. And the boys agreed to me. So we just did all good rock and roll, plenty of backing, and made it sound just like the American bands. Because by this stage, I could listen to a record and write down a manuscript paper when I'm actually hearing, and have it done on, say, going down on a journey. All just handy. Then we got more and more advanced. 1967, 68, 69, Call left in 68 again. He formed the Buckaroos, and we got Simon Scott in. Rob at this stage was singing. We were doing Blood, Sweat and Tears in Chicago, and a lot of fusion, jazz fusion, rock. Good music. Nobody else was doing it.
There wasn't another band in Ireland doing anything like it, was there, at the time?
Well, that's the problem, you see. And that too, I did various sessions. I did one with Horselips. I played trumpet on the Book of Invasions album. There were things like that were happening for us. In 1972, 73, we went over to England and into CBS studios. We wanted to change the band, change the direction. So at this stage, Robbie and Alan were writing a lot of original stuff with big, large contributions from John Trotter. Well, we've got John Trotter in too, but John, multi-instrumentalist. And not only multi-instrumentalist, but he was expert in every bloody one. No matter what he lifted, he was great. He still is. Great player. So, as I say, he contributed quite a lot to arranging too after. So we shared it then. It was great to have somebody to share with who knew we both knew what we were talking about.
Yeah. How did that go with the audiences? I know where it was good, it was very good because you had a big following in major towns. But
well, we used to play places like Cork, Waterford, Galway, Dublin, and people used to stand listening to the band. No dance, just stand listening to the band, staring at us, which meant that we could be more. It's a great inspiration to you. If you're taking solo, especially when you're making it up as you go along, you were able to improvise, and you got inspiration from the crowd. You know that you're doing something right. And all around you, there's a lot of terrible, bad country and Irish music. I'll be killed for saying that, I know, but I don't care. But there was some terrible, terrible. And people, even nowadays, still think they were great. These guys were great. Well, that's their own opinion. But it says more about the audience than it does about musicians. Sure.
Yeah. Who was your manager during those years, Ray?
Jim Aiken. Jim was, Aiken Promotions. Jim would have been a great manager, great gentleman. He's so good to us. A road manager, in other words, the guy who went around with us on the road was his brother-in-law, John McGovern. And struggled on to 74 and things. We went over to CBS. That's right. And we went in there, we made changed the name of the band to Hammer. And just mostly original stuff was on it. We finished it, but it never got released for some reason or other. Disputes within the band. And the band started to become split. You had the Omagh faction, and then you had the Dublin faction, because Robbie moved to Dublin, and you had, during his nights off, he'd be playing with guys like Skid Row, Noel Bridgman, and Philip Donnelly, and all those guys like Bruce Shields and all that. And then he'd come and play with us at the weekend, kind of thing. So it was
just ran its course, I suppose, did it?
Yeah. But we had good times.
And you teetered on the edge of international fame, really, didn't you?
Yeah, we were just on the very edge. We never fell in. Then the whole scene in Ireland changed totally. Country and Irish, not country and western now. Country and western grand, because it's got its own place in musical history. But country and Irish, where you had guys just picked off the street, guys who were singing in pubs one week and next thing they're advertised, as a big star for weeks. And then you know the score yourself, the big firms. It's very hard not to say things.
I know what you're saying. But looking back, Ray, now what do you make of it all?
Looking back at it, I went on after that and played with Paddy Cole and various other bands. I played with Hugo Duncan for a while too. Played with Elvis, what do you call him? Frankie Chisholm. Great time with him. Good programme, good show. And did a lot of work then with Brendan Quinn and the Kicking Mule and the Neil Diamond show. Fabulous. Great times.
Plenty of stages since that, right enough. You've worked all the time and still do.
Well, I wouldn't say work nowadays, but I play every day, put it like that. I go and, that was the inspiration for making a CD. I was practicing so much, which I never practiced in my life until lockdown here. I went on every day, and it's at least an hour, but sometimes it's 2 hours, 3 hours. I've played all the tunes that I knew, played them over them, turned them upside down, inside out. So it was good. It was good that it happened, really.
Yeah. Looking back, Ray, would you do it again?
I would. I'd make a few changes. During that time, too, I had a bit of a drink problem, right up to 1974. So I got over that, and I'm about 47 years now, or maybe more. Alcohol-free, like the beer. The alcohol-free beer, alcohol-free Ray.
Great. Yeah.
So, yeah. But that has been a great journey.
Has it?
Yes.
Did you go on the programme? Did you on the AA programme, or did you?
Oh yeah. I wouldn't have been here only for it.
Oh, yeah. It has saved many a person now, and there's so many spin-offs from AA and other areas where people, have many. It's not so much alcohol now; it's drug issues and other issues and gambling and everything else.
Oh yeah.
But the same principle of healing and accepting to be powerless over something.
Yeah.
Is a huge thing, isn't it?
It's the same programme.
Yeah.
It is used for all types of addiction.
Yeah.
It's a programme for living.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's in the AA, and he says it's the most exclusive, expensive club in the world.
Yeah, but the thing about it is too, you can just take what you need out of it. You don't have to go overboard. Some people do. And sometimes they end up drinking again or come back on their addiction. Just take what you need and keep yourself level.
It's interesting to say that, that you've come through all that and still...
Oh, yeah.
It hasn't diminished you in any way.
A great wife. She stood by me, through it all.
Through it all.
Doesn't speak to me, but... No, seriously, she's great.
Great. As my brother says with his wife, he can be right or happy, but not both. He has to choose. But interesting to see how it all looks back on it, Ray. But it isn't Omagh. I mean, maybe we're biased because we're both from the town. I don't know, but there seems to be a lot of musical talent in this town.
In the town, oh yeah, yeah.
And I think maybe that's to do with St Eugene's band, the influence that it had to teach people.
St Eugene's was a great basic education in music for a lot of young people. I would hate to see the lockdown messing it up. The lockdown, they haven't been together for so many, maybe a year and a half. But it would be a terrible thing to lose. It'd be just a disaster to lose it. But I have a theory too, but west of the band, we've had an awful lot of disappointments, artistically wise and politically wise. And you find that people who are sidelined like that, they produce an awful lot of talent. You take the black people in America and even the Jews, especially the Jews of the 1900 right up to 1970, around up to that, The Gershwins, my God, the music that they produce is unbelievable.
It's an outlet, I suppose, as a form of survival as well, isn't it?
Well, this is it, yeah. The art came out in them.
Yeah.
Well, you find from west of the band, Derry, the whole way down to Strabane, full of bands.
Yeah.
And especially there's different periods of it during the 60s. Every band from Derry.
You could have shoveled them out, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Go back to your dad then, do you think, because he had a difficult childhood, did he cling to his music, do you think?
That's right.
That's
Music
right.
was his escape, his life, and he gave it to his children.
Yeah.
He had some crack on the road with him.
Oh, for God's sake, it must have been. Oh, he's still remembered after all these years, I can tell you. Joe Moore is, as a mentioned man, as to say about Omagh, yet, all right, you know. And is your family involved in music, your children, or did they just use it
Yeah,
for...
it seemed to must a generation. Well, Tony would have played guitar a bit. Connor would play drums. But then nobody took it any further than that. Just a garage band, kind of thing.
Yeah, happy with that, yeah.
They were happy enough for that.
But all your brothers...
Then the scene was sliding down whenever they were coming up then, you know. It was starting to wind up. It was starting to wind up for a long time. It was the way the trend, the country and western, country and Irish rather, trend. It did a lot of damage to art in Ireland.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be saying that, but
Oh, well, I mean, I suppose a lot of people glorify the show band life, but in reality it's anything but glamorous, isn't it, right?
it is, yeah.
It's a tough...
It was
thing,
tough because
you know,
in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you took the roads in Ireland. And we travelled right through the summer, winter, everything. And we were, you imagine, you had to make a request at the border. We'd be back at 4 o'clock. If you were late, they give you an hour's grace, but if you were over that hour, you had to wait till 8 o'clock in the morning till they opened. You couldn't just drive on home because you had a triptych and you had a book, you had to get stamped.
Yeah.
Passport kind of thing.
But, yeah.
And I remember in the winter time you'd be sitting shivering in the van, picking the ice off the inside of the windows. Oh, it was tough.
Yeah.
And it had great times too.
Yeah. And who were the other promoters? You said Jamaican. Who it was a small cartel of managers that managed all these bands, wasn't it, really?
There's a couple of different cartels. There's a top rank. They were based in Castleblaney. They had a modus operandi. They would target somebody who was doing well in the lounge bars. Maybe not doing well, but somebody who was singing in the lounge bars anyway. And they would take all the provincial newspapers, put ads, half-page ads, watch the space for a new star for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then they'd put a big write-up about this person and the band, who's in the band, the whole coming your way. They also run the best venues in Ulster, so that a platform for their band, you know, already made. And the thing would be launched, and you had all these new stars appearing. People had heard of them because they were being advertised for weeks beforehand. And that was the formula that they used, with the result that actually the boss of one of those cartels told me, one time we asked for a raise, I'll just sack you all. This isn't get another crowd of boys out of the hedge. He says, they do just as well as you do. You know. But that went on. That was the unpleasantness of it.
Yes.
If you could take the financial thing out of it and all the times that you were done on money, if you removed that there, you'd have a great time. You know, innocence and loss of it and everything.
Were you around when Frank McBride done the 5 Little Fingers and made the...
And Frankie had that,
Yeah,
Frankie
yeah.
McBride.
Yes.
Frankie, you got to number 3, I think.
Thereabouts, yes.
Something like that.
Mhm.
In the British church,
Yes.
which was an achievement.
And myself, it would have been,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Frankie was too loyal. He wanted to stay with the Solomon brothers. They wanted to take him over and make him a star, but he wanted doing all right, boys. He probably sensed the pitfalls that were going to happen.
Who managed Frankie in those days, do you remember?
And those,
It was Barney Curley, I believe, now.
you know, I should know it.
I
should
think
know
it was Barney Curley. Maybe I think he maybe had got the record or maybe got the song recorded for him, or right, or paid for it.
It's funny, you know, Barney was in Maynooth, so was Jamaican at the same time.
That's right.
And apparently John Hume was in the Maynooth at the same time. The church lost out.
Canon law to music law. Okay.
And we met lots of interesting people. Coulter used to play in a wee band before us in Queens. Phil, I'm still good friends to this day.
Right.
He's a good lad.
Okay.
Didn't forget, you know.
I'm sure you met a lot of very famous people in your travels as well.
Yeah, I did.
Any surprises among them at all that, good or bad? Or
We played 1973, I think, or 74. We were playing at Edinburgh University, and I was tanking at the time. And the gig was an all-night gig, but you played for an hour, then you had an hour off, on for another hour, 3 hours during the night from 12 on. But there was about 4 or 5 different stages, different areas of the university where the music was being held. But we ended up, our off slot ended up with this ballad group. This guy with big hair, and we met up at the bar and telling jokes and talking about life on the road and all that. And there's another guy singing with them. And they were called the Humble Bums. And ended up anyway, this big guy carried me over his shoulder out, threw me in the van. We were heading back up to get what he called ferry home. And before he went, he took an embassy packet and took the inside out of it, and he wrote a number and his name and shoved it into my band suit. Still had the band suit on me after the gig. And Billy Connolly. About 6 months later, I recognised his voice. It was Parkinson was on. I reckon, I know that voice. Well done. I know him. He was under the striped trousers.
yes.
He's just starting out. Billy.
Billy Connolly, there you are.
Yeah. That was one of them. I sat beside, in the green room in Liverpool Odeon, Count Basie and Sarah Vaughan and Jimmy Rushing and the band. And I was thrown out. Bouncer.
Did it? Yeah.
Warned you boy, out. We had an afternoon concert, me and Pat and Johnny Murphy, God rest him. We were in Liverpool waiting on a boat over on holidays or something.
And then, sort of during the 60s and 70s, there was very little work here during Lent. Obviously, did you have to go to England to play those days?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was the usual trick. The 6 weeks of Lent, you at least 2 weeks at least with gigs in England. And you made a St. Patrick's Day, you'd be playing back in Ireland somewhere. Then you go back then maybe the following week for another couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Did that all the time, every Lent.
As you said, it must have been very difficult for a home life for your children and wife and family at home.
It damaged the home life actually. But as I say, we had to get over that too.
Yes.
And you look back on it, you've good times and sad times. Would you have done this or would you have done that?
But you could live your life with the phone leash, I mean, you are where you are at the time, and I think, it's a bit like AA. If you look back or look forward, you're going to fall. I think you have to stay the day you're in.
That's right, yeah. Mm.
I suppose the same with music or anything. You only can deal the day you have, I suppose, right, don't you? Really? But you've no regrets. And is there anything you still want to do? And have you a bucket list that you want to be involved in music-wise, or is there anything you think you haven't done that you still like to do?
I still like to do. Well, because of my health situation, I know I can't do it. So I don't try to project what I could do, because you're not going to do it anyway. But I still get a thrill of just going in somewhere completely stranger and playing. I did it in Australia, I did it in New Orleans, I did it in England, in different places.
Tell me about New Orleans. What was that like? What did you do?
Oh, New Orleans was hot. I went down, I was over visiting my family. My 2 daughters live in New York, and me and the wife went over to visit them. But before I went over, I checked out flights to New Orleans, and I got this flight in 3 days in a hotel for $180 in New Orleans, in the French Quarter. It was actually at the very edge of the French Quarter, Canal Street. So there, I booked 3 days we had a 3-week holiday over in New York, and I headed down to New Orleans on my own, and joined in the fun. The music was great. No matter where you went, there was great musicians. Went into club anyway, and I was sitting right up at the stage. And there's a grand piano, and obviously the band were short of a couple of members, but a motion to the trumpet player. I said, "What about the piano? Do you play?" He says, I said, "Yeah," because they're playing all the stuff that I knew. So I did that. It was great, but there's nobody to take a photograph of it. Next day, I was walking down beside the river, and went into Louisiana Heritage Hall kind of thing. And there's an old guy playing piano, and what's his name? Oh, I can't remember. But a grizzled beard, and he was carrying a oxygen tank around with him. But he was up playing piano, and he said, "Where are you all from?" He said, "We're talking about all the people there, you know." Of course, he came down to me, "Where are you from?" I said, "Ireland." "Ah, jigs and reels." I said, "No, I've played a bit of piano." I said, before that, I had said, he kept forgetting what he was playing. And I'd say, "Well, what was I playing there?" And then he said, "Oh, ask that man." And I told him what he was playing. He said, "How come you know so much about our music?" He says, "That you only had jigs and reels." That's the way that came about. So he says, "That's great." He says, "Because I'm going to take a break now, and you're going to play during my break." He says, "All right." So I got up and I played, and he kept shouting out tunes for me to play, and played.
Oh, yes, lovely story.
It was great. So,
oh, fantastic.
Willie Metcalf or somebody like that.
Gosh.
He played right in the 30s, in the 40s, you know, the old grey beard and all. That was me 2 days, or 3 days in New Orleans. Australia, Kevin McGrath, a friend of mine in Sydney, he took me to these clubs, and I ended up playing the piano on most of them. Never got paid for it, so I'm going to go back and see if I can get some money out of them.
I would say there's plenty of gigs you never got played for over the years, I'm sure, and show bands and stuff as well. You just walked off to the sound of your feet, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, yeah. That was a big danger.
Yeah.
And getting paid short quite a lot of the time, because there's no receipts, there's no way of tallying what money was lifted. Or, like if the money was obviously good, like if we played, say, the Ulster Hall or something like that. Well, Ulster Hall would be right because Aiken was running it, and he saw us okay. But if you're taking the all places, Guildhall and Derry, stuffed it every time we went into it. And there's a guy who was a member of another band, Derry band, but he was managing us at the time. But we were wondering why we were getting so many bookings in Derry. Every organisation get the platters, right? It's because he was getting £100. I'll get them free for £100. That was one scam he was on, and he went on. He was also scamming the door. So that kind of thing, you're pitfalls like that.
Yeah.
The most honest one we had was Pat Chesters. Pat was a great manager. He's band leader. Anything went wrong, Pat, you push Pat forward. You're the manager. Come on. You're the band leader. Poor Pat. Great friend. Friends for life.
Yeah. Ray, the Plattermen. Did you get into bother over the name? The Plattermen. Did the Platters rear it up at all, or was it any hassle?
No, we didn't bother. We just went on ahead, but we told people that we had bother.
It helped the story.
Yeah, oh yeah. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Absolutely. We're talking about a good story. When did the Plattermen first appear? You know, when did they appear on stage for the first time? Can you remember?
I do. There's different stages before that, before we became the Platters, then the Plattermen. So one Sunday afternoon, Brandon O'Donnell approached me down at Batisti's Cafe down the town, and he says, "I want you to play in my band." And I said, "Well, what'll I play?" "I want you to play trumpet." This stage I was playing all instruments and the brass band, and come down to my house next Sunday afternoon. That was the start of it. We formed a wee group, we called it the Melody Boys. First gig with them. This is a very embryonic show band. We were very young. First gig was in Old Culmore School at a dance to commemorate something or other. I don't remember what it was commemorating, but I was on the stage. Jimmy O'Neill was on the stage beside me, and Brendan O'Donnell, of course. Jackie Adams, I think, was on drums.
Was Speedy there at that time as well?
Eh?
Speedy Hamilton, was he there?
No.
No.
This is the very early before. Sorry. He was in a wee skiffle group then, the Jets. Anyway, the band played the gig, and I had sore shins afterwards. So I'll explain to you later how I got the sore shins. I'll not explain to you now.
Have you a year for that? Could you remember the year?
But 1958.
And was the combo based on any particular group or style, or was it just 4 or 5 lads together going to make music?
At that time, there was no. You weren't following trends. There was no trends in music. All you had was the American songbook, all the stuff coming from America and being broadcast on radio, and there was no homegrown music at all. No, like country and Irish and that.
Right.
Thank God. But anyway.
And so was it a blend of music and song?
Yes, songs, and we started off. We played a lot of Dixieland, the Darktown Strutter's Ball, and Whistling Rufus, and various other ones. So I was enjoying myself playing trumpet, and we do popular tunes of the day, mostly English artists. May you always.
Well then, how long did the Melody Boys last?
Oh, maybe about a year. We played quite a bit around County Leitrim, Cavan, and up around Omagh. And our mode of transport was McSorley's taxi, which is like a black taxi. Only, you know the way the ones hadn't, there's a door missing. Well, he got a different door and he put it on. And Mickey Cairns used to drive us, and Bobby Brown, 2 drivers, and Mr. McSorley, Packy McSorley, he used to drive us quite a bit too. And we had a sign that we put the gear on top of the roof rack, and there's a sign in front of it, a wooden sign, which just sat there, wedged with a drum behind it or something. The Melody Boys, Omagh. That's what we called ourselves.
Well then, the Melody Boys, did they morph into another group, or did the group split up, or what happened?
Both happened. The things just evolved from that, and decided to call ourselves the Platters Showband, because the Platters were a popular group. Remember, there was no universal music being streamed everywhere, not like it is nowadays. Only a select few had record players, and the Platters might have meant something to 1 or 2 out of a dozen, you know, and so we decided to use that to the Platters to like their music.
Right.
They actually, Jimmy Kennedy they recorded one of Jimmy Kennedy's songs, Harbour Lights.
Ah, yes. Jimmy Kennedy, the man with Omagh connections, of course.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well then,
South of the border, down Monaghan Way.
that's right. Or what did Frank McCrory have it? I south of the border down Pettigo Way or something. That's one of the old the pantos. Well then, how long did the Platters, your version of the Platters last?
We evolved into the Platters Paramount Showband.
Yes.
But Brenton decided that was too long, because your cards were small. And that's all we had at the time, 3 cards and a 3-figure phone number. Omagh 1, 2, 3 or whatever it was, you know. But that was grand. I was at school. Remember, this is 1957, 58, 59,
Right.
60.
Uh-huh.
You know, and we decided to call ourselves the Plattermen.
Right.
So we grew up, became the Plattermen, and we started getting a wee bit more organised. We got Artie McGlynn and Pat Chester's on saxophone. We got Leo in on saxophone, Leo Doran. And then, who else? Billy McGinty on trombone. Aidan O'Neill singing. And usually Jackie Adams on drums. And a great drummer and a great bandsman. Great with the ladies. A really good looking guy.
Right.
You know.
I suppose you needed that in the band. You needed the sort of the attraction. And yeah. Well, then, tell me this. So, was it a slick professional unit at that point, or were you still learning your trade, and had you decided to go professional at that point, or had you already got?
No, we were just out of school.
You were still at school at that stage?
Yeah, all right up to. See what age am I? Born 42, so that makes me what 79 this year. So I was, I don't know what age was then, about 14, 15.
Right.
Artie McGlynn was 12 or 13, and I was a year and a half older than him.
That's incredible.
I used to miss school to practice in his house because he was allowed to stay home from school.
So,
That's true.
that is incredible.
Eh?
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You know. And how many hours a night were you playing then at that point?
Many hours. We usually do the 5. We get from 9 to 2, but you always have a what do you call it, a tea break band, where half of the band would stay on, or maybe 3 or 2, depends who could play.
Right.
Without the others.
Uh-huh.
And it was it evolved nicely into once we got to four brass. I was arranging music for them, and things started to go. People couldn't. They were different than any other band.
Yeah.
Any other band were farting and honking away.
Right.
But we were playing the thing right, you know.
Was it a wee bit like the Glenn Miller story, the old James Stewart film, where there's an incident takes place and one of the players injures himself, and he then
You got the clarinet to play the clarinet.
yes, and something clicks in Glenn Miller's.
Yeah,
line.
there's a lot of myths going on. The main arranger for Glenn Miller's band was a guy called Jerry Gray.
An American.
And he was, I think he was another sax player. But he did In the Mood and all those. Right. Moonlight Serenade, that was the incident that you were talking about. The trumpet player.
It was based on fact.
Yeah, and so they put the clarinet on top, took one of the saxophones down an octave,
Right.
just a 4-part harmony.
Well,
kind of thing.
In that film, I think maybe it kind of simplified it, but Glenn Miller suddenly had the sound he wanted. Did the sound that you want evolve, or was there a moment when you heard somebody said, "That's the Plattermen, that's the sound I want"?
No, what I listened to on records, I just wrote down what I heard.
Right.
So you were copying what other
replicating.
bands already arranged.
Uh-huh.
A lot of tunes that you hadn't got the instrumentation, so you had to change it to our instrumentation and arrange it for that. But you usually got a good effect with it, you know.
Mm-hmm. And then the Plattermen, you went to America. How did you find America?
America, we were playing the Irish Coast, might as well be in Mayo.
Right. And did you have to change the repertoire?
No, because the first time we went to America, Speedy and Artie had left the band 3 weeks before, and we hadn't time to get a passport for a guitar player. So I was playing electric piano. So I had to use that to fill in. Nobody noticed the difference.
Right.
So
Oh no! And how long did you stay in the States, or how many tours did you do of the States?
I remember going to Niagara Falls in summer, '67, because we went up to Toronto for a week from New York, and then I seen it frozen then in the following January.
My goodness.
So that was 67, 68.
Right.
And we did 69 again, we did another tour. And toured Canada and America with Paddy Cole.
Yeah.
So after the
Plattermen, yeah.
demise of the Plattermen.
Yeah. And then with the Plattermen, how did American and Canadian musicians react? Did you have much time to interact with them and to jam with them?
We never met them.
Right.
Any places that we played, it was, well, with Paddy Cole's band, it was different.
Mhm.
We were playing venues which were more American. They weren't just Irish clubs.
Aye.
There were more. And then in Canada, anyway, you had an awful lot of immigrants from the Northern Ireland,
Yeah.
especially Toronto.
Mhm.
You had Eaton's shop. If you were from Ballymena, you got a job in Eaton's shop.
Right.
Big store in Toronto in the 60s.
That's right.
Aye.
That's right. Of course,
Where are you
Irish
from?
Rovers,
Ballymena.
Rovers, they were all Ballymena and that Antrim side too, you know.
Yeah.
Well, then, the music within the Plattermen and the genres that you played and the styles that you played, how would you define it?
Things evolved
And the
all the time,
yeah,
right? So, towards the end, 1974, late 74, we got to such a kind of a peak artistically that the crowds were starting to stand and listen to us. They weren't dancing. Some of them just sat on the floor, just listening to the band, which was great. Which you couldn't believe it. We'd done what we set out to do, to get people to listen to the music instead of whatever, you know.
Yeah. And then, did you play both the dance halls and concerts, or was it always dances? And did you
It was
have
always
to,
dances.
You
The
built that
concert,
up yourself with the
the concert
audience?
thing hadn't come on
Right,
by then.
right.
No, concerts were a new phenomenon.
It must have been strange for the band to see people, not dancing but actually sitting and
Yeah,
listening,
that's what I say.
showing,
It was very inspirational.
yeah, and showing great respect.
Because
for the
when you were
music.
playing a solo, I played a lot of flugelhorn and
Yeah,
trumpet at the time. And when you were playing a solo, you knew that people were actually listening to what you were doing.
Yeah.
It was great.
yeah.
You're educating these people.
Mhm.
Then the whole thing
Yeah.
just collapsed.
Well, then, within the Plattermen, the lead singer, did that kind of, in a way, dictate how the music was evolving? When you brought in a singer with a certain
No,
voice.
we were a good team in that way.
Right.
We knew what was good for the band, and that's the direction we went. Like, we wouldn't do anything which is outlandish, totally outlandish. It would just keep things good
Yeah.
and play to the best of our ability.
And who called the shots musically? Did Jamaican, for example, say, right, guys, I've heard this.
No,
play
he
it.
knew.
You knew
We
yourselves?
we knew what we were doing.
Aye.
So if Jim used to run us in the Ulster Hall. We had all the big dates in the Ulster Hall.
Right.
There was St Patrick's Night, Boxing Night, all those.
Some venue.
And of course he had, we used to call it the orphanage, the Orpheus. And Tuesday night there, and stuff. Then he bought the Boom Boom Room, Starlight he called it then. Strange name for a Belfast ballroom, the Boom Boom Room. But
Ahead of its time.
yeah, with some great
Yeah.
great nights in Belfast. Oh, Belfast was great, and Dublin was great. Cork was great. Galway was great. Limerick
Were there different crowds with each different city?
was, yeah.
I-
It was. You could define it as kind of the further you went west, the crowd would be kind of more mixed. You could get away with doing a few country western things,
Right.
and yeah. But if you're playing in Dublin or playing in Cork was unbelievable for us.
Right.
We used to play the Arcadia in Cork, and we were advertised as a colorific Plattermen. Everybody had a different colour suit. We always had something new coming into Cork, and there were 2,000 people in.
Right.
Peter Prendergast owned it, a lovely man, great friend of her. And outside where the ballroom was, it's demolished now, but outside now there's a walk of fame, Plattermen stars on it,
Oh, lovely.
and a
that's
footpath.
Lovely. Well, if you don't mind me asking, I suppose, in terms of if you're I'm trying to get my head around how that scene operated. Did everybody draw a weekly wage, or were you paid by gigs, or how did that work financially? You know, without
We
getting
just
too
pulled
much
the
of it?
money at the end of the week, and we took our expenses out of it and split it 7 ways or 8 ways, depending on how many was in the band. And of course, Jim got his cut. That's the way it went.
And if you weren't playing that week,
Sorry?
if you weren't playing that week, no show, no dough.
No dough, no
Right.
show, no dough.
Right. I often wondered how that worked with
Well,
the relationship between the contract or in the contract. You know?
No, we had no contracts. No. We felt that if you had half a contract, there's something wrong.
Right. It was.
I'll never forget. We were playing a night in Dundalk with the Bachelors, and who else was on? I think it was Adam Faith. But these 2 gentlemen came over to us and produced contracts. And the first line was 25% of the gross goes to them.
Right.
We'll get you all the publicity, gigs, the lot. So we were told to avoid, we knew to avoid contracts.
Because basically,
These are famous gentlemen too.
right, you were feathering somebody else's rather big nest.
Yeah, well, they had the Bachelors already signed.
Right.
In place.
You know, and what about England? Did you play much in England at all with the
Yeah,
Plattermen?
mostly again Irish clubs, the big Irish clubs. We got into the Mecca ballrooms at one stage, but I think there was a union dispute, a musicians' union, about bands, Irish bands coming over, because we were doing. In the Mecca ballrooms, you had a big band, a dance orchestra, maybe 15 people in it, maybe more, and they were all union members, and so they didn't fancy you guys come in with, just going on the stage and playing and
Right.
leaving you in a scruffy Irish gits. And we met Morley, Mr. Morley, the head.
Oh,
of
of Miss World fame.
We had a audience in the Locarno in Coventry, in that ballroom. They played quite a few. They played Hammersmith too, I think.
Right. And again, would you have played for an entire dance, or would you have done a kind of a spot of a few numbers, or what? Or
We do an entire dance. Well, in Ireland, in the earlier days, you'd play from 9 to 2. As I said before, you had a wee break in the middle, 15 minutes. Or as our Bobby used to announce, he used to say, we're going to take a half an hour break now. No, take a 5-minute break for 10 minutes and be back in half an hour. Well, that kind of thing.
oh dear.
That's right. That's what it was. I got it right at last.
Is the gay night from dark to daylight I spent with people of high renown, but with all their splendour and heaps to spend, sure my mind would wander back to home a town.